A domestic dilemma. On Thursday, Martin Meadows left the office early enough to make the first express bus home. It was the hour when the evening lilac glow was fading in the slushy streets. But by the time the bus had left the Midtown terminal, the bright city night had come. On Thursdays, the maid had a half-day off, and Martin liked to get home as soon as possible, since for the past year, his wife had not been well. This Thursday, he was very tired, and hoping that no regular commuter would single him out for conversation, he fastened his attention to the newspaper until the bus had crossed the George Washington Bridge. Once on the 9W highway, Martin always felt that the trip was halfway done. He breathed deeply, even in cold weather when only ribbons of draft cut through the smoky air of the bus, confident that he was breathing country air. It used to be that at this point he would relax and begin to think with pleasure of his home. But in this last year, nearness brought only a sense of tension, and he did not anticipate the journey's end. This evening, Martin kept his face close to the window and watched the barren fields and lonely lights of passing townships. There was a moon, pale on the dark earth, and areas of late, porous snow. To Martin, the countryside seemed vast and somehow desolate that evening. He took his hat from the rack and put his folded newspaper in the pocket of his overcoat a few minutes before time to pull the cord. The cottage was a block from the bus stop, near the river, but not directly on the shore. From the living room window, you could look across the street and opposite yard and see the Hudson. The cottage was modern, almost too white, and new on the narrow plot of yard. In summer, the grass was soft and bright, and Martin carefully tended a flower border and a rose trellis. But during the cold, fallow months, the yard was bleak and the cottage seemed naked. Lights were on that evening in all the rooms in the little house, and Martin hurried up the front walk. Before the steps, he stopped to move a wagon out of the way. The children were in the living room, so intent on play that the opening of the front door was at first unnoticed. Martin stood looking at his safe, lovely children. They had opened the bottom drawer of the secretary and taken out the Christmas decorations. Andy had managed to plug in the Christmas tree lights, and the green and red bulbs glowed with out-of-season festivity on the rug of the living room floor. At the moment, he was trying to trail the bright cord over Marianne's rocking horse. Marianne sat on the floor, pulling off an angel's wings. The children wailed a startling welcome. Martin swung the fat little baby girl up to his shoulder, and Andy threw himself against his father's legs. "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy!" Martin set down the little girl carefully and swung Andy a few times like a pendulum. Then he picked up the Christmas tree cord. "What's all this stuff doing out? Help me put it back in the drawer. You're not to fool with the light socket. Remember I told you that before. I mean it, Andy." The 6-year-old child nodded and shut the secretary drawer. Martin stroked his fair, soft hair, and his hand lingered tenderly on the nape of the child's frail neck. "Had supper yet, Bumpkin?" "It hurt. The toast was hot." The baby girl stumbled on the rug, and after the first surprise of the fall, began to cry. Martin picked her up and carried her in his arms back to the kitchen. "See, Daddy?" said Andy. "The toast." Emily had laid the children's supper on the uncovered porcelain table. There were 2 plates with the remains of cream of wheat and eggs, and silver mugs that had held milk. There was also a platter of cinnamon toast, untouched except for one tooth-marked bite. Martin sniffed the bitten piece and nibbled gingerly. Then he put the toast into the garbage pail. Hoof, hoof! What on earth? Emily had mistaken the tin of cayenne for the cinnamon. I like to have burnt up, Andy said. Drank water and ran outside and opened my mouth. Marianne didn't eat none. Any, corrected Martin. He stood helpless, looking around the walls of the kitchen. Well, that's that, I guess, he said finally. Where is your mother now? She's up in your all's room. Martin left the children in the kitchen and went up to his wife. Outside the door, he waited for a moment to still his anger. He did not knock, and once inside the room, he closed the door behind him. Emily sat in the rocking chair by the window of the pleasant room. She had been drinking something from a tumbler, and as he entered, she put the glass hurriedly on the floor behind the chair. In her attitude, there was confusion and guilt, which she tried to hide by a show of spurious vivacity. Oh, Marty, you home already? The time slipped up on me. I was just going down. She lurched to him, and her kiss was strong with sherry. When he stood unresponsive, she stepped back a pace and giggled nervously. What's the matter with you? Standing there like a barber pole. Is there anything wrong with you? Wrong with me? Martin bent over the rocking chair and picked up the tumbler from the floor. If you could only realize how sick I am, how bad it is for all of us. Emily spoke in a false, airy voice that had become too familiar to him.